Hey, this is Ronnie from the Muffs, and you're watching Crash and Bleed.
Yeah, man.
Let's do this.
So
good to meet you, Jay. Hey, thanks for having me along.
Yeah, man. I'm excited.
We never met before.
We have met in the past, I think, on some messenger like years and years ago.
I'm generally friendly. Yeah.
I doubt you'd remember me.
And where are you? Are you in London?
No, I'm in near Birmingham, where Ozzy Osbourne comes from.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So
we can go to the Muffs English memories later. But go ahead, Jay. You're running the show here.
Okay. So are we calling the Muffs a legendary band at this point? Because there is a legacy.
Yeah. No. It's nice of you to say that, and yeah, I guess it's kind of true at this point. You do see our name, like in descriptions of other bands a lot, and I guess when you have we had like a 28-year career, so I'll take the legendary. I'll go with that. Even though we're not a household. It's weird because we're not like a household name or anything, but amongst the people that like us, and amongst the people that know, and amongst musicians and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we do seem to be well respected and known. So I really do appreciate that. And legendary. Yeah, let's go with that.
So is it fair to say that you came up in the grunge world?
Yeah, a little bit. I started, I'm originally from Houston, Texas, and I grew up in the original kind of punk world to a certain extent. In 1980, I was 15 years old, and things were lax then in Texas, and I was getting into the local punk club at age 15 and 16, and I won't say they were letting me drink in there, but I saw a lot of those first wave bands in their prime. I saw Black Flag on the Damage tour. I saw the Bad Brains on the Rock for Light tour. You know what I mean? I consider myself really lucky that I was able to do that. So yeah, I kind of grew up in that world, and then but definitely by the time of the Muffs, we definitely came up in the grunge world. We formed in late 1990, played our first gig in 1991. So we were definitely right in the middle of the grunge, and I liked all that stuff at the time. I was buying all the Sub Pop singles and stuff. I had an advanced tape of Bleach, you know what I mean, before it came out. I saw Nirvana with 30 people in the room, so yeah, we were definitely influenced by that stuff. I guess I'm still wearing plaid. A friend of mine has a theory: you dress how when you peaked, and maybe that's true. But yeah, no, and we were loud. The early Muffs. I mean, we were loud and feedbacky and threw our instruments around and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we definitely kept on that grunge world, and I won't pretend that that's not why we got signed to a major label too. I mean, we got signed in the post Nirvana. We got signed in '92. So that's definitely when all the major labels were looking for grunge bands and stuff. We got signed, and it was kind of hush hush at the time. So we played Gilman Street. Little they know we'd signed to Warner Brothers at that point. That said, we did an interview for Maximum Rock and Roll, and by that time the word got out, so that interview never came out of Maximum Rock and Roll. But shows you what a fine line that is. We were, if they didn't know we were signed to a major label, yeah, we were all fine. But yeah, anyway.
Well, you mentioned a couple of hardcore bands there. Was that something that you got into? Like, were you deep into the hardcore world?
Not. By the time it was hardcore, I kind of was out of it. I mean, I guess the Bad Brains are considered hardcore, but by the time it came to like Gorilla Biscuits or whatever, I don't know. I didn't latch onto that stuff so much. I don't know, when it was bands just playing things fast, that was less interesting to me. And I'm sorry if I'm offending members of your audience by saying that, but that's just the way it was. So, you know, that early phase I was talking about, I mean, bands, and not just punk bands, like even bands like the B-52s or whatever, bands were just fully formed with these original sounds. It was quite an amazing time. Like, you know, they didn't develop those things over like 10 years. Like, just Gang of Four, like all these bands just sounded different, and I don't know. Again, I was lucky to be around, but yeah. I did like some hard punk, but you know,
You guys had a couple of hardcore songs like "You Lied to Me" and that bonus track at the end of the first album. You know.
No, and we don't forget we had an Angry Samoans cover on the album, which really shouldn't be on the album. Let's face it. That first album we recorded all that stuff, and then it all made the record, which is that wasn't supposed to happen. And and you're talking to the guy who sang in quote marks that Angry Samoan song. You know, that didn't be on the record. But yeah, no, we did, and yeah, I forgot about that bit at the end. The CD age, when you'd have a bunch of blank space and just throw something dumb at the end. That's what that, yeah. And yeah, You Lied to Me, you know, that was a Vox Pop song that wasn't well known. Also, in the early days, we were doing, we covered Kissin' Cousins by the Saints. What else? Well, we did Beat Your Heart Out by the Zeros. Yeah, no, so we definitely had that influence. We covered a Devil Dogs song for an Estrus compilation. But I don't know. All the songs we covered, I'd like to think had some melody there too. That's the thing about the Muffs. Underneath, even in the early Muffs, underneath all that noise and feedback and grunge, I mean, there was melody there. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's why we kind of straddled that line. I mean, that's why some people think of us as a punk band, or some people think of us as a pop band, or some people think of us as a garage band, or heaven forbid somebody just think of us as a good band. But yeah, that said, that's why we were able to play all those kind of gigs. We'd play with punk. We'd open for the Dwarves, and we'd open for the Dickies, even to the end. You know, but then we'd also play with No Doubt, and you know, and I'm proud of that, actually.
So that song You Lied to Me off the New Love 7-inch, why wasn't that featured on any of the compilation albums? Because there was 2 of those, wasn't there, with slightly different tracks, but that one didn't make either of them. Why is that?
Did it not? I wasn't even aware of that. You know, I don't have a good answer for that, other than Kemp. You know, as far as those compilations, the first one, Hamburger, was really it was illegal. We didn't get the rights from any of the labels. What happened was a friend of ours had compiled a CD of all those Stray tracks, and I gave it to Long Gone John at Sympathy, and he was like, "This is great. I'll fucking put this out." And that's a bad Long Gone John imitation, and he did. He put it out. So that's why we had to kind of redo it in a legal way for Caboodle. So that's why Kids in America is not on there and some of the tracks. But as far as You Lied to Me not being on there, yeah, it should be on there. And I can only think that maybe Kim didn't want it on there. You know, I don't know.
Well, dude, it's such a great song. It sounds like Black Flag on the verses, and then the choruses have like an early Descendants feel about it, you know?
Yeah. No, that was always fun to play live, and it was a good. Chris, our original drummer, always wanted to sing stuff, and it was actually a really good singer, and you know, it was a good opportunity to throw him a bone there, even though, and I'm singing along just for better or worse.
Yeah,
I was thrust into the singing thing. I was never a good singer. I tried, but yeah,
I like
that's
it.
another subject. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate that.
But then again, my favorite Muffs album is the first one.
Yeah, no, fair enough. It's a lot of people's favorite. You know, to me, I think a lot of our early stuff sounds a little dated at this point. And that includes a few tracks. I would throw about 4 tracks off that first album, and I think it'd be much better. But it is what it is.
Which ones?
I'll just say I would throw. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, we wanted an album cover that looked like classic First album cover with the four of us, like Pretenders first album or whatever. There's all those tracks. Yep. I would throw the Angry Samoan song off. I would throw North Pole off, which is that little dumb instrumental thing that I wrote. Better Than Me, I would throw off. And, and another one.
I wouldn't get rid of any of these tracks.
There are good tracks on that. That album. We played a lot of those. We played a lot of those tracks for the rest of our career.
I thought you guys kind of eliminated a lot of the early stuff from the live shows, like after Blonder and Blonder came out.
I guess we kind of did.
Songs that you kept around.
I guess we kind of did. No, I mean we always did Big Mouth, and we generally always did Lucky Guy. There were some times we didn't do Lucky Guy. Saying Goodbye. We moved some stuff in and out, but that one was generally around. What else? We would do Baby Go Round. We would do Every Single Thing, which is my favorite song on the record. What else? I don't know. All for Nothing. I know that's not a punk one.
From Your Girl?
From Your Girl. Thank you. From Your Girl we would do often. Yes. Yeah, those are the ones. Dude,
they're such good songs, man. I do want to talk about those songs, but I also wanted to have you talk a little bit more in depth about how you met each band member in those early days, because I don't think I've heard you talk in depth about meeting those people.
Oh, sure. Yeah. What happened, like I said before, I'm from Houston. I'm from Houston, Texas. So what happened was I was a fan of the Pandoras, and I went and saw the Pandoras in '86 when they had the Stop Pretending album on Rhino. And I met Kim backstage. We talked, and I decided the next night I would go to Austin and see him again. They were touring with a band called the Beat Farmers.
Were you in a band at that point as well?
I was not in a band. I was in bands in high school. I actually asked my dad for a bass. Kids don't ask for basses. You know what I mean? You ask for a guitar or drums. I was influenced. I was hanging around the local record store at age 13, 14, and the manager there played bass. So I was influenced to ask for a bass. So I got a bass, and I played in a couple bands in high school, and then I gave it up. I thought, hey, if I get a good offer, maybe I'll play again. But I went to the other side. I became a writer. I started writing in 1985. I became a music editor at our local weekly paper, which every town had one. It was called Public News. And I thought that's what I'd do. I'd be like, this is great. I get to talk to Sonic Youth. I get free records. I get in shows free. I was out 4 times a week, and I got a bad reputation. I was influenced by all the classic writers of the 70s, like Lester Bangs and stuff. So I was real snarky, and I would pan local bands, and they all hated me and whatever. I thought I would do that. So anyway, I was doing that when I went to the Pandora show. So that second show in Austin, me and Kim actually spent a lot of time talking afterwards because they were opening. And so we became friendly. And then my brother lived in Southern California. So about 3 months later, I came out to Southern California for a month, and I went to a Pandora show, and I got reacquainted with Kim, and we actually so that's when we became friends. And this was not romantic. We just became friends. We hung out, and after that, we stayed in touch. We sent each other packages, talk on the phone. I hate to sound like every documentary. There were no cell phones there or email. So we actually did that, and we stayed friends. And then cut 3 years later, in 1989, Pandora's come through town again. I went to California again. That's when it became romantic. So me and Kim were a couple. We became a couple, and we were a couple when we formed the Muffs. So obviously I got to know Melanie because Melanie was in the Muffs. So during this time, I don't know if you know much about the Pandoras, but Kim played bass in that band, and they were led by a girl named Paula Pierce, who wrote all the songs and sang lead. So Kim was writing all these songs, always wanted to front a band, always wanted to play guitar. but none of these things were possible in the Pandoras. Now, the Pandoras at that point had gone heavy metal direction. They started as a garage 60s influence band. Then they went a little poppy. This is all due to the whims of their leader. So when they went heavy metal, they lost their old audience, and they didn't really gain a new audience. And so they were on their last legs, more or less. So during this time, Kim was like, and Melanie, and me and Kim were our best friends were Melanie and her husband Larry. Larry went on to start In the Red Records, which you might know of, legendary record label. But so during this time, Kim had these songs. Sometimes I'd play bass on her 4-track. She found out I played bass. We actually tried out a drummer, this guy named Murdoch, who had a band called Large Hardware, which I still think is a great name for a band. So anyway, by the time, and so the Pandoras ended up kicking out Melanie, and a month later, Kim ended up quitting the band. And so we were all ready to go at that point. Kim and Melanie picked up guitars. I played bass. Kim had a stash of songs. We actually asked Roy McDonald to be our drummer. Roy was in Red Cross. Roy went on to be the Muffs drummer for 25 years in our definitive lineup. But Roy turned us down. He had just had a baby. He ended up moving to Texas. And to be honest, and Roy will tell you this, the prospect of joining a band with 2 ex-Pandoras, picking up new instruments, and one of their boyfriends playing bass wasn't the biggest, the biggest selling point at the time. So that's kind of how we formed. And Roy recommended Chris. Chris worked with Roy at a record store here called The Warehouse. And so we met Chris and Chris Crass, and basically we started like rehearsing within a month of Kim being out of the Pandoras. So that takes us to late 1990. And then, like I said, January 25th, 1991 was our first show. Our first 3 shows were with these psychobilly bands because Chris was involved in that scene. And so in a week, we played our first 3 shows. First show, all our friends came to. So it was like packed, like the Red Cross guys came, Danita from L7, but the Pandoras, all our friends came. It was packed. Second show, nobody. So, and what happened was we worked our way up actually really quick. Again, sounding like an old man, but back in those days, there were a lot of rock clubs in LA. You could play 3 times a week in the area, and we did. And we basically started opening shows, and that led to like the club owners liking us, so putting us in the middle slots and weekday gigs, and we were headlining by the summer, which is pretty quick. And again, we were friends with Long Gone John, so we made the deal to do our first single. We also knew Bruce from A Go-Go, so we recorded our first 2 singles, the Sympathy one and the A Go-Go one, at the same time. Produced by our friend Bill Bartell from White Flag. So all this happened super quick. By the end of the year, we were talking to Warner Brothers. We got an offer from Sub Pop to do a Sub Pop single, which was a huge deal at the time. And all the business people who swept us under the rug, these are like people. Kim was signed to a publishing deal through the Pandoras, who basically put her off. But by that time, you're talking to Warner Brothers, and all these people came out of the woodwork. We didn't have any business people. I'm always proud of this. We had no lawyer or any of that stuff. It was all organic, the whole major label thing. So we didn't even have anything on tape besides our singles. So we got signed to Warner Brothers on a demo deal. So we had to go to a big studio and make a demo, and they had to decide whether to take us or not. 2 songs from that demo made that first record, that version of Lucky Guy and the version of Everywhere I Go. Those are from our original demo. So all of a sudden, we're having to get a manager, and we're having to get a booking agent, and Ian Copeland's trying to book us and all this stuff. And I was like as you might have picked up on, I was just a big fan first and foremost. It fell into being a musician, if you will, in this band. So I was blown away by all this stuff. I was just like, oh my God. So anyway, the guy that signed us, he had just signed Mudhoney, which was and he was like a kid. He was like he was younger than us actually at that point. He had been an assistant, so he's actually responsible for signing Flaming Lips, even though Roberta Peterson got the credit for that. Then they made him an A&R guy. He signed Mudhoney. Everybody wanted Mudhoney after Nirvana, right? So he signed them, and then he signed us. And then he basically brought in a friend of his, Rob Cavallo, to kind of co-A&R guy us. So we had two A&R guys, which is an unusual thing, but it worked for us. And both of those guys produced our first record. And that was the first record Rob Cavallo produced. And your audience may or may not know, the second record he produced was a record called Dookie by Green Day. So, and then after that, yeah, he's winning Grammys and he's a much renowned producer. But he always gives us credit. That first record I produced was that First Muffs record. So there you go.
Dude, I love the First Muffs album way more than anything Green Day have ever done. I'm being deadly serious. I'm not a huge Green Day fan, but I love the Muffs. But I was wondering, what were the first songs that Kim ever wrote, and what was your reaction to them when you first heard them? Did she demo them by herself?
She did demo them. She had one of these old school 4-track with a cassette in there, recordings. And yeah, she would do them at home. I don't think she had a drum machine. It would just be like a click track going click, 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 click. They're interesting. I always wanted to release her demos, and we kind of did. I'm getting a little ahead of this myself here, but I would love to one day release that stuff. I mean, her songs were fully fledged. They were done. Like we didn't jam like Pearl Jam or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like our songs are like, they're written with specific parts and solos and bridges, and sometimes we throw in ideas or whatever about beginnings and endings, and maybe arranging a part in the middle here and there. But no, she really took pride in doing these demos. There's some early rough ones, but things like Don't Waste Another Day. That's an early one. Obviously, those ones on our first single, things like Guilty and I Don't Like You. There's one called On My Own, which actually made our last record, or maybe it was on Whoop-De-Doo. I'm sorry, I get a little mixed up. That was an early Musk track. We had this initial batch of songs, and then she wrote a second wave of songs, and that's where Lucky Guy came in, and I Need You, and she stepped it up a little bit. You could tell. Baby Go Round, and so she got better as we started performing as a band, and we kind of went on. She got better at it, and these songs would come in waves with her. Like all of a sudden she'd present 3 or 4 songs like that to us, and it'd be like, I remember even at the time, just like, oh my God, like, these songs are really good. And and they got better. I know you like the first album, but when she did the demos for Blonder and Blonder, that was really like, wow to me and us as a band.
So on the New Love music video, was this you guys just fucking around with a camera, or was somebody like paying for this?
So that was done by a friend of Chris's named Greg, and Greg was a guy that was like Chris's best friend, used to just always hang around, and he was a filmmaker. And he's like, I'm gonna make this video. Let's go to the beach and let's go to the cemetery and just pile on each other. None of that was like, obviously, if you watch it, it's not scripted. I haven't seen it in a long time, but that part at the beach, that's by Dick Dale's house at the time, Point something down there in Orange County. And Greg just kind of put that together. So there's no budget or whatever, but you nailed it, Jay. Us fucking around and just cut into some kind of thing, and there was a prop arrow on the head hanging around somewhere, and there's probably a ton of outtakes of us further fucking around. We did a lot of fucking around back then, let's face it. That was kind of the spirit of that lineup.
Yeah. Was this video for anything? Did you send it anywhere?
We did. We sent it. Back then there was a show called Request Video. I guess it was a UHF station. If nobody's going to know what that is at this point. There was this sub-level of channels back in the day, kids, UHF. Weird Al did a movie called that. And it was Channel 56, and it was on every day, and it was hosted by now a dear friend of mine named Gia. And yeah, they would play video. They'd play the big videos. They'd have big people on. They'd have whatever ministry on. But they'd also have local bands on too. And so we ended up interviewing there. But yeah, Request Video played that video. You know, obviously MTV wasn't going to play it or whatever, but yeah, it did get played. And Request Video, there's a documentary in the works about Request Video, so maybe that'll see the light of day one day.
Dude, MTV should have played that video. I mean, that's like a radio hit.
Yeah, no, that's a good song. Very Johnny Thunders, right? Like, yeah, no, that's a good. You know, I won't say we played that one a lot in the later days, but every now and then on an encore, if maybe we were somewhere weird, we would bust that out. When I say somewhere weird, I mean like Japan or something. Or if it was one of those shows where it's a really adoring crowd, like, you know, I think the longest show we played was like over 2 hours in Boston one time. And so at that point, we're playing everything we know. We probably played New Love still at that point too. But thanks for saying that. Yeah, New Love is a great song. Very, very simple, but great. Yeah.
It gets stuck in my head. Like, I'm trying to sleep and I've just got the vocal melody in my na 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 na. It's in my head.
Yeah. That's what she was great at. Yeah.
The same can be said for From Your Girl and Baby Go Round as well, because Baby Go Round especially, that reminds me of like, you know, a bunch of girls getting ready to go out on a Saturday night, you know, singing into the hairbrush in the mirror. Like, that's a full-on radio hit again.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. That's very. I like your description of that. Yeah, it's very girl groupie of the '60s kind of thing. Like, yeah. You could hear the. I don't want to get too lofty here, but you could hear that Shangri-La's doing that or something. Definitely. Yeah. And and From Your Girl, that was always a big audience favorite. Like, and let's face it, it's a good song. There's a lot of. I remember our friends the Fastbacks covered that one in recent years, and Kim from the Fastbacks was like, "Man, this song is a lot harder to learn than I thought." And yeah, there's a lot of Muff songs. There's a lot going on. They're deceptively simple sounding, but there's a lot of weird chords moving around in that song and stuff. And
I covered that song as well. I struggled with the ending because it changes quite a lot near the end, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it does. And what I don't know if I should reveal this publicly, but Kim wrote that song. Kim was mad at Melanie one time and was like, "I'm going to write this song. It's going to be hard for her to learn with all these chords." That's what inspired From Your Girl.
Well,
Melanie learned it. It was fine. She learned it.
I was going to ask how many of these early songs are about you.
Yeah, good question. A good percentage of them are about me. And it's funny because they were written while we were a couple. Saying Goodbye is about me. Lucky Guy is about me. What else?
All for Nothing?
All for Nothing. Don't Waste Another Day. Yeah, these are not nice songs.
Well, how did you feel, though?
Yeah, no, it's fine. You know, it's funny when she presented Saying Goodbye to the band, she tried to mask that it was about me and us, and she said, you know, the real title. She just read a book about Phil Spector being a mean guy, and she's like, the real title is Saying Goodbye to Phil. But you know, so here's the thing. By the time we made our first record, me and Kim broke up. Leading into the first record, probably a few months before we made the record, and we were by that point as a couple, we were kind of done with the romantic thing. So there was no residual. We didn't have that kind of jealousy thing. I wasn't jealous of her dating people. We were kind of done as a couple, but we were not done as friends, and that's clear, right, from the history we had afterwards. But I remember we talked and we were like, look, the band's doing well. We got to kind of work this out. Now that said, there were some uncomfortable moments in the van around the other band members because me and her knew how to push each other's buttons. And, you know, she'd run away and call for my head, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, by the time we made our record, you know, whatever, I'm fine with and to make things even a little weirder, Kim was dating the engineer of the record. So I remember our friend referred to it as punk rock rumors, the Fleetwood Mac record at the time, because there's all this intra-personal stuff behind the record. But yeah, I know, to be honest, there are lyrics I still don't know to our songs. I was never, sometimes somebody will point out a lyric. I'm like, is that what that is? And wow, that's probably about, yeah. So no, it did not bother me. We were moving so fast at that point. I didn't have time to sit back and think. And I, of course, you know, that's Kim. I wasn't going to get mad.
So Warner Brothers, that's crazy. This is the same Warner Brothers as the Looney Tunes, right? Or is this some subsect division?
Yeah, well, I mean, the same family. Warner Brothers Records was a part of Warner Brothers Pictures or whatever. The building was adjacent to the lot. I mean, yeah, Warner Brothers Records. I mean, that was the dream label, right? They're always known as artist friendly, and they certainly were in our case. But yeah, growing up, I certainly knew the legend and everything, and you know, it was cool just to be. You could feel the history when we signed. The old timers were all still there. It was still run by Mo Austin, who had run the label since the late '60s. Lenny Waronker was there. You know, all these people were still there. Like, you'd go to the art department and the people who designed Doobie Brothers record. You know, that kind of thing. They were all still there. That cut to. We'll go back. I know. We'll get back to the first album, but like, cut to like right after Blonder came out in '95. All those people left. And things changed, and things started changing in the whole business then, but that's a whole nother podcast. But yeah, we were, again, when we got signed by, I'll call him a kid. We got signed by this guy, Dave Katz-Nelson, who really was in it for the right reasons. And you can see that on that first record. Like, we made that record with our A&R guys. It's got all that weird stuff on it. For better or worse, they let us do what we wanted to do. So yeah, doing that first record for Warner Bros. Was amazing. And like I said before, we knew we wanted that classic album cover. You know, 4 people on the cover of the band, blah blah blah. And then throwing in that collage of all that stuff. I remember wanting to have the disc itself be the Warner Brothers label from the early '70s, which was like this like puke green label. Cause I remember it from Alice Cooper's School's Out, my big brother having that record, and nobody knew what I was talking about. We went to the halls of Warner Brothers to find a gold record with that label. And then we found one, and it was a Doobie Brothers record. And then everybody looked at me and said, "No, we're not doing that." So yeah, we were hands on with all that stuff. For better or worse. Yeah.
Had you not done any work in professional studios before this?
Of course, the girls had made records in real studios before. And maybe Chris to a lesser extent. But I'd never been in a studio before. So all of a sudden, we were in these big studios that cost, you know, whatever, how many thousands a day. And, you know, walking by Maurice White from Earth, Wind and Fire in the hallway and stuff. And that was always crazy, too. Like Ginger Baker from Cream, who was playing in Masters of Reality at the time. Like, we shared a space with him. That was really wild to me. And we recorded the basics of that first album at Sound City, which people might have seen. There's a documentary Dave Grohl produced about Sound City. They talk about the board and everything, the sound. We recorded on that board. We recorded in that room. Same room that Heaven Tonight was recorded in, and Damn the Torpedoes, and all my favorite records. So that was kind of weird to be, well, as you're saying, we still are kind of a punk band at that time. people would drop by. Joan Jett dropped by to just check in because she liked girl. I remember her quote was like, "I love seeing girls play guitars." That said, we never saw her again. She did not keep up with us throughout her career, to my knowledge. And we had Corla Pandit play on the record. That weird organ stuff you hear, there's a little organ interlude, and then he plays on All for Nothing. Corla Pandit was this guy who was from India who he had one of the first TV shows in LA in the late 50s where he would just play organ and wear his turban and there'd be smoke and he would play just like he does on our record. We later learned he wasn't really from India, and he was a light-skinned African-American guy who took on that persona the rest of his life in order to work. It's quite a story. There's a documentary about him. But and Corla Pandit, after that, I don't want to say that we resuscitated his career, but after that, he got embraced by the whole lounge culture and scene, which kind of sprung up in the 90s after that. People, drinking tiki drinks and all that kind of stuff and appreciating Martin Denny and all that stuff. So Corla had a good end of his life. And it's because of me. All right, Jay.
So what was the band discussion like at that time? Like when Warner came along, like were you guys worried about signing to a major?
A lot of bands that got signed in that, as we said, that post-grunge kind of post-Nirvana thing, a lot of like boutique-y major label distributed albums started popping up, like Hollywood Records and Giant Records, and a lot of those bands got snapped up by those kind of labels, like say the Fluid, who were on Sub Pop. They probably had a worse time of it, to be honest. I mean, even friends of ours, even like the Posies, I know they had that whole "we don't hear hits" thing. We need to hear more songs.
Yeah,
we never had that. Yeah,
I was just talking to Joe from the Dead Milkmen about his experience with Hollywood Records, like 2 albums, and then they got dropped because they didn't meet the sales expectations.
Right.
Well, I mean, were you guys worried, like, if you didn't hit an expectation, you might be dropped?
We weren't. We didn't really concern ourselves with. It's weird looking back and saying that, but yeah, we weren't looking at sales charts or what. I still don't know how many records that thing sold. I know it hasn't recouped because it cost $100,000 to make. So all the royalties from the reissue that Omnivore put out, still go to paying that back. But yeah, we really weren't. And like I said, we got to pick our video director for Lucky Guy. It was Dave Markey. Dave Markey did the Desperate Teenage Love Dolls movie and Love Doll Superstar, was a friend. He's in the Red Cross crowd. In that video, now MTV did not play that video. But it's fun, it's
Who played it originally? It did go on the air at some point, didn't it?
Did it? I mean, if it did, I'm sure some of the lower level places played it. But it didn't get on MTV. We didn't get on MTV. Sad Tomorrow from Blonder got played on like 120 minutes programs, which that was the alternative once a week, for those who don't know, thing on MTV. But yeah, Lucky Guy did not get on MTV. But yeah, again, maybe it got on Much Music in Canada. But you look at that video. Yeah, that video is not like the other videos at the time. I mean, God, I'm dressed up like a leprechaun in that video for gosh sakes. And then that scene too with me and the leprechaun. Not to jump about here. Our 2 A&R guys are really in that scene with the A&R guys at the table. Most of those guys were old guys cast from a casting agency. But Rob and Dave are in amongst that crowd. And like, I remember Rob even did a fake ponytail, making fun of himself. Those guys were like, they were in it with us. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like we were on the same level. And yeah, nobody was like, look, we need to get on radio. Well, I'm sure there was that talk behind the scenes, but Songs on that record didn't get on the radio too much. I know Lucky Guy and Everywhere I Go were kind of the singles, if you will. They were more like emphasis tracks, if you will. They made those little one-song promo CDs of them, tried to get them played, but they didn't get played. Probably because the record, it just doesn't have that kind of sheen of what was getting on the air at that point, for better or worse.
No, it's better than all that stuff on the radio. I mean, it's one of the best albums that's ever been made.
Yeah, no, I love you. You keep saying that, Jay. I love you saying that.
I think I've heard Nardwuar bring it up as well a couple of times in his interviews. I think he just pulls the vinyl on people, makes them talk about it.
Oh yeah. Nardwuar is an old friend of ours. Nardwuar goes back to, the Girls and the Pandoras. The first thing we ever put on vinyl before our first two singles was a Nardwuar compilation. Clam Chowder and Ice versus Big Macs and Bombers. We recorded a song, and I know that's on Hamburger and Caboodle, called Get Me Out of Here. That was recorded on that 4-track of Kim's I was talking about at our rehearsal space. I should talk about our rehearsal space. We used to rehearse at Dave Nasworthy from Chemical People's house. Dave Nasworthy lived in Beverly Hills, and he would just he had this great space in the back of his house, and he would just let bands he liked practice there. So it's one of the great unsung things of the punk rock scene. L7 practiced there. Red Cross, All, Pandora's Than Us. Anyway, that was, yeah. Anyway.
Well, I wanted to mention NOFX because they're going to come up a little bit later, but
yeah.
Were they on your radar back then? Like, were you listening to those Epitaph bands in 1992?
When Offspring Smash came out, the Epitaph Records still only had one guy in the warehouse shipping out everything. One guy. So when Smash took off, John hired a couple of friends to help in the warehouse, and I was one of those guys. So I started working in the Epitaph Records warehouse in 94. So that's kind of, I'd heard of NOFX and stuff, but I didn't really pick up on them. But that's when I got my crash course and all that, all those bands. So yeah, that's kind of when I first got into NOFX and stuff. So because I was shipping out their records too and breaking them by mistake. Yeah, that was a funny job. Yeah, once I backed the forklift into a whole pallet of Offspring cassettes, I damaged about 600 pieces just in one thing. I used to drive a forklift and unload a truck on busy Santa Monica Boulevard at Vine. I can't believe I did that now. I had that job for like inside of a year, but yeah, that's when they first signed Rancid and all. I remember, and I was working in the warehouse, and I remember I got a call from Tim from Rancid after they left the warehouse saying like, "We didn't realize that was you. We love the Muffs record." Let's think about that first record that you love. All those bands love that record. We later did a Warped tour, and that's when I realized. I always thought we were very, if people just heard us, they would like us because we're infectious. That's when you realize in front of a big crowd, we're not like Anti-Flag or whatever. Meanwhile, all the band members would be watching us. You know what I mean? But that's much later. But yeah, that's our first NOFX, and then obviously they asked Kim to sing on that song on Punk and Drublick, which is a little later. Kim was a backup. You probably know that story because you're a fan, but they originally Jennifer Finch from L7 was going to do it. Went into the studio and then wanted to change lyrics to make them more PC or something. We love Jennifer. No offense to Jennifer, but NOFX is like, it's isn't working out. So yeah, they brought Kim in and Kim nailed it. And she sang with them live once. They did, oh God. It was an anniversary of Epitaph, and they did these 3 nights at the Palladium with all the bands. And Kim sang Laurie Myers on stage with them. And from that point on, people in NOFX shirts started showing up at our shows.
Yeah, I've seen you in a couple of NOFX like hats and shit. I think you had some shorts at one point as well.
Yeah, that would be that cutting to that Warped Tour we did. That was in the year 2000, and yeah, I cleaned up on merch on that. So yeah, I had the NOFX bucket hat. I'm wearing Vans shirt. Yeah. There are pictures where everything I'm wearing was free. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then Fat Mike ended up signing us. I don't know if we're going there yet, but yeah, cut to we're kicked off Warner Brothers and Fat Mike signed us. And originally we were going to be on Fat Records, and then we made our record, which is a Muffs record. And Mike's great. You know that. Mike's straight up. He's a great guy. And he's like, we're going to put you on Honest Dons. Honest Dons is where like Chicks Dig It. You know, all the kind of poppier bands we're on. He's like, I thought you'd make a fast record, which we never heard that before. Like, haven't you heard our last record? She's like, yeah, I know. I don't know what I was thinking, but it's going to be on Honest Dons. So, yeah, we did that record and Mike was great to us. He gave us a great budget. I've apologized. I've seen him. We're not best friends or anything, but I've seen him a couple of times since. And I always apologize because we still had a manager. It was actually our second manager at that time. And the manager dealt with Mike, and I apologize to him for that because the guy was a bit difficult to deal with. And Mike was not. So just to take the story full circle, I was a tour guide at the Punk Rock Museum this last summer. Yeah, I got booked in the initial booking where they were booking just a lot of different. Now it's more kind of streamlined and it's Glenn Matlock or whatever. And but I did it for 3 days, and it was Jay. To be honest, I was very nervous. I get nervous about anything any strange situation I'm walking into. I was good at it, and not as a member of the Muffs. I was just good at like the punk rock history thing. Like I was proud of myself. I was like, they should hire me just to be a tour guide, not as a member of the Muffs, but just to do this. Anyway, I didn't see Mike till the last day, and what happened, and it's very poetic. So you in the tour in this, they have a jam room, they call it, and it's all the guitars, whatever, people's Tim Armstrong's guitars in there, whatever, and people can actually play them. And so the tours would end up there, and so I'm doing my final whatever, and Fat Mike walks in, and he's doing a story for the New York Times, and he's like, Ronnie, and so in front of the New York Times reporters, and in front of my tour group, and in front of the guys running the jam room, me and Mike had kind of have this reunion. I'd not seen him since Kim passed away, and as people may or may not know, after Kim passed away, Mike did this tribute to her, where he did a version of Lucky Guy. And it's quite beautiful and a great, I'll cry thinking about him doing that. What a great thing for him to do. And so he's kind of asking me questions, and I'm telling him about, Kim and what she died of and her condition. And through the story, Mike would hug me and say, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was that bad. Like we embraced multiple times during the telling of the story. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful way to end my stint as a tour guide, and to like have my reunion with Fat Mike, and again apologize to him about things he might have had to deal with when we were on the label, and thank him for signing us, and thank him for all the things he did. So, Fat Mike, he's a great guy. Yeah.
Well, since you mentioned the jam room, I always wondered, like when I first heard about this, what if someone like steals a guitar? Like what's in place to stop that from happening?
Yeah, there's nothing in place to stop that from happening, but someone would have to get by a lot of people and a lot of stairs, and there's a security guard at the front door too. As far as all the people I met that work there and all the people that did the tours, everyone is, sweet and respectful and yeah, I don't think they've even thought of that. I mean, they've got a guy working the room too. It's Rob Ruckus most of the time. He's a great guy too, Vegas legend in his own right. But yeah. But that said, yeah, they're not on chains, and they don't have like sensors on them or anything. Look, if someone wants to steal the guy from RKL's guitar, good luck to him. You know, I don't know.
That's a band that continuously comes up. Barry from RKL gave me this MDC thing because he's in
no
MDC.
Offense, Barry. I don't even know if there's an RKL guitar in there. I'm sorry, Barry. I didn't mean that.
Oh.
I used to ship out your Epitaph record, Barry.
I've got a sealed copy of that as well. I want to sell it at some point. The Riches to Rags LP.
Nice. I'm sure Barry says, like, sell it. Get what you can get for it.
Did you guys feel like you were missing out by the fact that it was just Kim that got invited to do the Laurie Myers thing?
Oh, no. Not at all. I mean, how could we be expected to be on a NOFX record? I mean, yeah, no, it's a part. They needed a girl voice part, and there you go. There were things Kim did that I didn't learn about till after she died. Like, I didn't know she did she sang on a Let's Go Bowling song called My Wiener. I had no idea. Kim was always up for doing a lot of extra stuff. But yeah. I read that in her obituaries. I'm like, Jesus Christ, Kim. Here I am trying to, like, keep your legacy intact, and you sang on a song called My Wiener that's getting highlighted. Yeah, no. That was obviously that NOFX thing was obviously that was for her, and no, nobody was ever, you know, in the Muffs. I know a lot of bands have weird relationships and stuff. Not with us. It really was, and I don't want to sound like a cliche, but it really was a family. We really supported each other. We really took care of each other. You know, I ended up having a detached retina in this eye. That's why I kind of keep it in the dark. So I'm blind in this eye, and that happened like in our latter part of our career. Kim would lead me around on and off stages and stuff. Friends of ours noticed. I didn't really even. It's not. We were there for each other and always. And you know, we would text each other after shows and say good show and all that kind of stuff, and hug each other. And yeah, I remember when Kim was when she was in the Pixies for those months. We didn't see each other for about 6 months, and when we got together again, you know, I'm gonna get the chills thinking about it. It was such a warm. We were so happy to see each other. So it was special that way, and we were all aware of it too. I did not take it for granted, especially the last 10 years in the band. I knew how special it was, and I did not take it for granted.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Kim was one of the most hilarious people that I've ever known. It doesn't surprise me that she would do it like a silly song like that. Yeah. No, believe me, Kim probably took very little direction from them and sang that part probably beyond what they expected. So. Well, she's the best vocalist that you could get for the job, but.
Oh, I forgot about another NOFX Kim story. You're gonna love this one, Jay. So this would be. This was before. I think it's before our first album came out. We opened for NOFX. It was down in Irvine. Big show at like I remember it as like a college gymnasium type of situation. So, we were in the middle. We got some good middle slots before that first album. Anyway, we opened for Bad Religion with Offspring opening before our first album came out. Anyway, that's another story. So it's this NOFX. I was scared to death, Jay. Anyway, so we're opening for NOFX and Kim down in Orange County. So Kim lived nearby, so she went home, showed up a little later than the rest of us. And I remember hearing like, oh my God, Kim's in a police car. Like, what happened? What happened was Kim was coming into the show. She had a water bottle like this, but bigger. And they were like, you can't bring the water in. And she's like, why? They have a little back and forth. And she's like, okay. And she opens a water bottle and pours the water on the cop's shoes. So it's assaulting a police officer. I mean, I know it's water, but technically it is. So they were going to arrest her, and the promoter had to go down and and our manager had to go down and do some fast talking. Probably said, look, the kids are going to riot. They wouldn't have rioted, but they're probably like, look, the show's got to go on, blah, blah, blah. So, she scrolled out of that with just a ticket or whatever. But yeah, we almost didn't play because Kim poured water on a cop's shoes when we opened for NOFX.
Well, since we just mentioned a bunch of skate punk bands, and my channel is originally a skateboard related channel, I have to ask, were you ever involved in the skateboard world? Yeah, well,
personally, I grew up in the 70s. And yeah, I had skateboards. I was never that great at it, but I tried. I mean, and you and your audience are going to know that's the era of skate parks and skateboarding, Skateboarder magazine. I was into all that stuff, man. We had a great park called Skateboard City, in Houston. Again, Southern California connection. My brother moved out here at an early age. So my mom took me out here on a trip. I had her take me to the Skatopia skate park in Buena Park. I'd read about these places in Skateboarder magazine. And to Pipeline and Upland, because they were always featured in the magazine. Now I realize how far those places are. God bless my mom for doing that. And, let me show you this. Hang on. I'm going off for 1 second.
All right.
This is my rocket deck. All right. I got signed by Tony Alva. Tony Alva signed this he did a skateboarding demonstration in a parking lot of a department store promoting the movie Skateboard. So it's like 1978 or whatever. And if you look, I'll show you some detail here. Can you see that? I wrote DT under his name for Dogtown, obviously. But again, I was reading skateboard. I didn't even know what Dogtown was. I just knew I liked all these skaters. And I wrote DT on there. Anyway, I kept my rocket skateboard.
That's crazy. You had that behind you the whole time.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, there's a lot of stuff in this room. But yeah, that's the one thing I kept from there. So that's my skateboarding history. Again, I was never that great, but I tried and I did it. So that said, Dogtown and Z-Boys, that's one of my favorite movies because it just really brings me back to all that. I loved all those guys. Cut to now, Tony Alva comes in I work in a record shop on the west side, basically bordering Santa Monica in West LA. Tony Alva comes in and I'll send you the photo of me and him. And I'm just like a little kid when I see him. He knows me now. It's crazy, but I'm like a little kid when I see him. I feel like that little kid that got that skateboard sign in the parking lot of Globe department store when I was a kid. So anyway, cut to in the Muffs, our songs got licensed for some skate videos. I couldn't tell you what they are. It's not like Bones Brigade ones or any big ones, but yeah, we are in some of those VHS skate videos. I don't know what songs, probably things like Saying Goodbye. It's going to be higher energy stuff.
Like not
obviously,
like, not like me, that kind of thing.
Yeah. You know the business, it's not going to be all for nothing. And then also doing the Warped Tour, they have the skateboarders and the motocross guys too. Well, we were always since we had a van, most of those bands, I don't mean to burst anybody's bubble. Most of those bands are on buses. Your NOFX, they're on buses. All right. Even Long Beach Dub All-Stars, they all had buses. So they'd all be in one section, those sons of bitches, like having their barbecues or whatever. We were in our van with the skateboarders and the motocross guys, which was cool because every now and then we'd have our own portable toilets that the other guys wouldn't have. That's the dark side of the Warped Tour, Jay, the toilet situation. It's like 100 degrees everywhere. You're in a parking lot, and those are the bathrooms. So when I'd see like Brett from the Donnas coming out of one of those things at 4:00 in the afternoon, as we had to leave because we were in a van. Anyway, that's sometimes we'd be with the skateboarders and we'd have just that unblemished blue goo in the portable toilet. Oh my God.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about what it was like mixing this album. Like, I was wondering what you guys prefer to have the loudest in the mix, like back then, and is it the same in the later days?
Yeah, as far as the mixing, I can tell you a little bit about this, but I was not. I'm not a studio guy, so I was not into the mixing. Kim was very hands-on on everything, so she would have to be there. Obviously, with us, it's going to be loud guitars in the mix first and foremost, and then the vocal just kind of straddling that, right? But guitars was always the most important thing. Mixing that record, that record, it had a lot of people's opinions going on. Like I said, we had our two producers who were A&R guys. We had all the band members except me. That's why you don't hear any bass really on that record. Everybody else needed to hear themselves, and that's just the way it is. We got louder bass as we went on, but so it was a big gang of people, and it was very frustrating for Kim, to be honest, which is why a lot of the reason the lineup kind of fell apart, and why she took control from that point on. To be honest, she was not into having these votes or being outvoted. She got outvoted as far as like the demo, like I told you, the demo versions of Lucky Guy and Everywhere I Go being on the album. She was outvoted on that, and she never let that go. Like not even until the day she died. She still remembered that, would still bring it up. And I can see that, the songs are her babies. She's our leader, let's face it. So yeah, the mixing was tough. The mixing went on for a long time. And then the mastering. Kim and Rob flew to Maine and had Bob Ludwig, the famous mastering engineer, master that record, and and they rejected it. And that's mainly Kim rejecting it. So by that point, we had run out of money, and we had to use the in-house Warner Brothers studio engineer. This is the Warner Brothers building, that little studio. A guy named Lee Hirschberg, who, to be fair, is a legend, but I mean, he engineered Frank Sinatra records and stuff. So he was an old timer at the time. But you love the record. So, but that's that. We ended up having to kind of settle to just look. We don't have a choice now. We got to master the record. It's got to be done. Yeah, mixing and mastering. They take a long time with our band. Believe it or not.
Do we have an explanation as to why Melanie left? Because I don't think anyone's ever truly said what the reason was. Like, maybe you could touch on that, or maybe you don't want to.
I don't mind. I mean, it's not. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a clear-cut reason. What happened was, I mean, we did a lot of touring for that record. Fractures started appearing, and ended up not being the happiest of times. Chris left abruptly in the midst of the touring cycle for that first record. We only did one tour with Chris, and that was right after the record came out. Right after the record came out, we did a tour opening for the Goo Goo Dolls. They were a rock band at the time. A lot of people don't remember. Pre-plastic surgery.
I don't have any of their stuff.
No, fair enough. You probably you would understand them being a rock band a little more if you heard their first couple of records. But I'm not going to sit here and defend them. But that's it. They were on Warner Brothers. We opened for them. And Chris did that tour. And then we set up a co-headlining tour with a great band called The Digits, who were on Touch and Go Records. I recommend everybody check out The Digits. They actually have a Record Store Day compilation coming out. But anyway, we did a co-headlining tour, and Chris quit 10 days before that tour started. had one of his. I always say this: Chris was almost out of the band the whole time he was in the band. Chris was very volatile. He threatened to quit all the time. He's a little different than us, a little older than us. Chris would put tampons in his mouth before songs. Anyway. That said, Chris was a huge part of the beginning of our band. Chris was great. He sang great harmonies, played great drums. We're friendly now, which is great. We weren't always. So Chris finished with the tour, had some kind of whatever, some fight with Kim on the phone, said, fuck you, I quit. And he did. He quit. He thought we would come crawling back. Well, we didn't. We got introduced to our friend Jim Laspiza. And it's amazing. We went on tour 10 days later with this guy that we'd never met before and never played with before, obviously. And then Jim did the rest of the touring cycles.
And then you guys reached out to Roy, I guess, or did he contact you to say he was finally ready?
Decisions were made to kind of ask Roy to be in the band. Roy accepted. And we did a little kind of tour up the West Coast before we had plans to record Blonder. And there were some, without getting into detail, there were some personality issues and some flare-ups, and the decision was made that Melanie was going to have to go. I was not to try and be the good guy, but I'm always resistant to change. I'm like, we can work this out. No, it'll be fine. And both Rob and Kim were like, no, it's gotta happen. So yeah, that was, and again, when we had this meeting with Melanie, it wasn't like, you're gone. It was like, Kim's going to play all the guitars on the record. And Melanie stood up and said, fuck you, I quit. And that was it. And those two didn't speak for the next 17 years.
So was it a comfortable decision for you guys to just come to start playing as a three-piece?
What happened was we're in the midst of making the record, and we got an offer to open for Green Day at the Palladium, the Hollywood Palladium, and we're like, well, we got to do this. It's like, I guess we'll do it as a three-piece. So we played the night before in a club, not because we're any big shots or anything, but we played under a different name just so there'd be no expectations. We played as a three-piece and then played that big gig as a three-piece, and we're kind of like, wow, this is kind of fun like this. This kind of works. It's kind of more rocking when the rhythm guitar goes out for the solos and the sound. Yeah, so there we go. Then we were born as a three-piece, and we were that lineup for the next 25 years.
Well, is that you playing bass on the demo of All for Nothing, or was that Kim?
It's probably her, to be honest. I again, going back, I played on some of those early demos before the Muffs. But as far as demos like that she presented the band,
I sort of miss the bass on that song now when I listen to the album version. I kind of want there to be the bass. It's perfect anyway.
Well,
but
again, that's that whole mixing fiasco. I just the bass is not audible on that record too much. It's just the way it turned out. All for Nothing, yeah, it's probably just whatever. But it just took a back seat to that organ part. I don't know. And then Kim, she admitted, she's like, I've learned that it's good to have louder bass on records.
Didn't anyone say anything about this when it got reissued? It got remastered, didn't it, as well? It
did get remastered. So, they can only do so much. There's that cliche, we'll fix it in the mastering or whatever. I mean, you can only do so much. But they can bring up some low frequencies or whatever. So maybe it sounds a little better. I don't know.
Well, on the subject of CD reissues, I've learned recently that you actually give a big thumbs up to CDs, don't you?
I do. Yeah. Well, I see, and again, I work in a record store still, as I have most of my life. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with CDs, people. They're fine. In fact, a lot of these things, like a lot of these vinyl, if you watch these vinyl people, whatever, finding the best sounding vinyl, they'll say this sounds as good as a CD. I know it's not as sexy, if you will, and I got plenty of records. I just see no reason not to work all formats. That's my thing. Like, why would you just be a vinyl only? Like, I just don't get it. And like that CD you held up with the bonus tracks, that's a no-brainer for me. I want the bonus tracks too. I don't. And like box sets, that's CD is its proper format. I'm sorry, box sets on LP are weird to me.
And
if
heavy.
You have heavy. If you have this big, thick thing in your collection with 6 LPs, that's not what you pull out to play when you want to. I don't know. That's my. I just, again, I see no reason to not work them all. Play records, yes. Play CDs, yes. Even there's stuff on cassettes. It's only on cassette. Yeah.
So you worked at Amoeba in Hollywood?
I did. Yes.
Was that a long time ago, or was it when they were doing like the "What's in My Bag" stuff?
No, that would be be into that era. It would be after Really Happy. Yeah, I'd say like 04 to like 2000, something like that. Yeah, I was a used buyer there. I was on the front lines. I get my life threatened on a daily basis. We had security there, thank God. Yeah, no, some people would be like, I'm coming back for you with weapons. Like, I'm only making offers here. Like, but, you know, in that part of town, you're standing between people and drugs and, you know, whatever. And then I became really hardened, too. Like, I just, because I had to deal with this, like, every day. Like, so I had this going into battle attitude, which sucks. That said, it was fine. I love my coworkers. We're still in touch. But yeah, I saw everything in that line. I saw, we lined people up like the post office there. It's a big store if people don't know. I saw a woman have a miscarriage in line. I saw a person die in line. You know, employees were fucking in the freight elevator. I should write a book about that place. Like, Muffs played there 3 times too. I was there for the McCartney gig. Yeah, a lot of great memories there. Still love all those people. Yeah.
Well, this just popped in my head. I was wondering if you guys had ever crossed paths with like the Lunachicks, like in their grungy days.
Yeah, no, we did. We did a tour. We did some dates with the Lunachicks in '95. Probably like 10 dates or something. And that was great. They were great. They're great girls. And in fact, Theo did maybe the sweetest thing anybody on tour has done for me. It was a summer tour. I wear glasses. I would wear a sports band to keep them on. So, because I moved my head around a lot. Whatever. I acted like a dumbass on. But anyway, so these summer tours, my glasses would totally fog up. One night after tour, Theo's like, I got you something. And she gives me this gift. I open it, and it's a glasses fog cleaning kit. So great. So great. Just, again, I'm sure she's forgotten, but I remember, and that's one of the sweetest things ever. And yeah, they were great. Theo would warm up her voice by going, laundry, laundry, laundry. Yeah, I haven't seen them since then, but yeah, love them. And
you don't have their contact info or anything.
I don't. Yeah, no. It's funny touring, and this goes with probably most bands. You're like best friends on the tour, and then sometimes you never see them again. Sometimes you do, but you know, yeah, we just never cross paths. It's not like a bad thing or anything. Just I'm sure if I walked in a room and they were there, it would be big hugs, right?
Well, they're coming back now, and they've got a new documentary coming out. Yeah.
Looking forward to that. Their book was great. Yeah. No, I keep up with the bands I like. So yeah, I watched. They did punk rock bowling and stuff. Yeah, great band. They sounded great on the reunion too. So
yeah. Do you think we're ever gonna get a Muffs documentary?
Yeah, well, you know, there was one in the works before Kim died, and the guy he worked for a TV station on the East Coast and actually came out here. He was looking to move to the West Coast, and it didn't work out. That's why it kind of fell apart. But he actually got a lot of good interview footage. He made a good start of it. And then when Kim passed away, he wrote me and said, hey, I want to get the movie going again. But like so many things, you know, you have good intentions and just life gets in the way and it falls by the wayside. So I do think it could still happen one day because, it's definitely a good story. A lot of interesting stuff happened to us. It's got a good beginning, a good middle, and it's got an ending. You know, so yeah. I do think it'll happen one day.
Yeah, I hope so. Or a book. A book should come out, probably written by the band members.
Yeah, no, not a bad idea.
Yeah,
I know. I mentioned before our friends Red Cross, their documentary and a new album are coming out, and a book this summer. So, yeah, it can
everyone's
happen.
doing a book.
I've had notes to write an autobiography for like 10 years. I've been threatening to write a book. I even have someone that wants to put it out, but I have people that want to help me that have written books. It could happen. There's a lot of good stories, and we'll end with this story because it's good, and because you're wearing a Ramones shirt. I will tell you one of the best compliments that we ever got as a band. I was on the Blonder and Blonder tour. We're playing the Melkweg, if that's how you say it, in Amsterdam. After the show, Roy comes running up. Ronnie, Dee Ramone's here and wants to come backstage. I'm like, why are you asking me? Get him here. So Dee and his wife, Barbara, walk in, and the first thing Dee says is, your first 2 albums got me through rehab. Right? What are you going to... How can there be a higher compliment ever? And our second album had only been out like 4 months, too. But yeah, your first 2 albums got me through rehab. Now, it didn't stick, but I think it stuck for a while. So yeah. How amazing is that, Jay? Right?
It's pretty incredible, man.
Yeah.
But I have to ask all my musical guests who they think was the most iconic punk rocker.
Everyone's going to give you the same answer, right? It's got to be Iggy.
That does come up a lot.
I mean, it's got to be. It just has to be.
But you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if someone out there was to say Kim.
Yeah, no. It's true. And like I said in the beginning, I mean, we're lucky that the people who are fans of our band, they're like really fans of the band. You know what I mean? They're like, it goes deep.
Yeah.
And I feel that, and it's great, and it's very nice. And yeah, Kim has inspired so many people, so many girls. You know, the Linda Lindas, they came to our shows as little kids because one of their fathers was a Muffs fan for all these years. He actually took the inner sleeve photo on Whoop-De-Doo. His name's Martin Wong, but his daughter's Eloise, the bass player. And yeah, there's a photo of us playing outside after Whoop-De-Doo, like 2014, and there are 3 of the Linda Lindas, probably age 5, wearing protective ear things like airport people do, and they grew up and they played Big Mouth, and you know, even the Donnas, even early Donna, their first lineup covered L7 and the Muffs. I mean, so it goes back to even then, like we were influencing people even at the time. So it's really great. It's really nice, and that's why I like you're asking to talk to me still.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the work is there. Our legacy's intact. Our records, for the most part, are pretty timeless. And again, Kim's responsible for that. A lot of that, because again, we didn't use trendy producers, trendy mixers, whatever. You know, a good song is going to be a good song.
Do you think Kim would have, if Kim stuck around, do you think she would have continued the band until...
Yeah, I do. I think, even though, like I said, those latter years, I started kind of I was even taking note of the horrible bathrooms in these clubs. Like, I remember this. Yeah. But our shows in those latter years became big love fests. Like what you're talking about with the people who like us, you could feel it. The audience was all love. Like, and we were feeling that, and the audience was feeling that. And Kim wasn't going to stop writing songs. She wanted to start doing more like producing bands and stuff. She would have done that too, but she would have always done the Muffs. That's why consider us a band till the day that she passed away, because we were, you know. Yeah. We made that record when she was sick, and she oversaw it, and, you know, she got to look at it. And we had copies before she died, and it came out 3 weeks after she died. So
it's such a fitting album cover too. It literally looks like she's saying goodbye to the fan base.
Yeah, we that's the third to last show we ever did, and that was our first time in Buenos Aires. And we I remember walking in, I was like, "This place is big. This is a big place." And then they had a curtain situation, and I don't know if you've ever been in a band or done this, but when you're setting up behind the curtain, you can hear the people murmuring and talking, and you can hear how many people. I always got nervous, but it's like, man, this is big. This is going to be good. And it was. And so that crowd on the special shows, I would say Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band bow, because they do that on the back of one of their albums. So that's why we're doing that bow. And thank God we had a great photographer there. I'm going to mispronounce her name. Eileen from Argentina grabbed that shot. And yeah. And I knew because, you know, Kim was still around, but wasn't out as far as being sick. So that record was coming out as like the next Muffs record, and who knows how it would have been received. We always knew that it would be a tombstone of sorts eventually, but we did want to have it on the cover, and people, because you start doing the press 3 months before the record comes out, right? So people are like, "Is this a live album? What is this?" Blah blah blah. But I knew that it would be understood one day, and that said, it was understood by the time it came out. But thanks for saying that. I do love that picture. Is just, yeah, I love it so much. Man. And you can see, you look at the crowd's faces. You can see, yeah.
Well, Ronnie, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, all good, thanks. Jay. This was fun. Thank you. You're a good guy, and thank you very much. And you know how to get me. You're a good guy, Jay. Thank you.
Thanks, man. I love you for doing this.
We didn't get to my other English memories, but that's gone on too long already.
Oh, you can come back on.
Also, almost getting our asses kicked in Leeds. That's a good one. All right, Jay. I'll come back on anytime. All right.
Oh, yeah, man. Sure, man.
Yeah. Okay. Well, part 2. All right, Jay. See you later.
Thanks a lot, buddy.
I can't